Another incredible can of worms has been cracked open, and it's exactly what I love. It's old school Titan lore. The kind that feels right at home with characters like Bran Bronzebeard. Right? The type that is teasing a vast, exciting world, thanks to our sponsor. Audible, the place to get your audiobook fix, especially if you are into World of Warcraft, because they've got all the hits. And today, get Dawn of the Aspects for free. Try Audible free for 30 days at audible.com/Bellular or text Bellular to 500 in the US. Dawn of the Aspects is a foundational book of Warcraft lore. It's extremely important because it tells the story of how the Dragonflights actually came to be. One of the most tantalizing parts of Dragonflight is seeing their ancient history and their culture, and in this book, you'll learn how they were before the construction of Tyrsold, back when they were beasts scratching it by in the frozen wastes of Northrend. And speaking of Tyrsold, the new hub city in Dragonflight, you'll meet Tyr as well in this book. It's a really great, fun book, and I mean, man, I've had Audible for years. With life being all busy, it's just great to actually listen to some audiobooks when I'm taking a walk, driving, or just leveling up in World of Warcraft. Of course, all the audiobooks that you get with the credits are yours forever, even if you cancel the sub, which is just great. So get your first audiobook credit free with a 30-day trial at audible.com/Bellular or text Bellular to 500. And that's also not to mention all the other stuff that you get for an Audible subscription, like their whole segment of premium content that you just get included with the sub. But man, yeah, get that credit, listen to Dawn of the Aspects, learn some Warcraft lore. We find another tablet in Uldaman. And this time, it's a Titan-forged report on the Curse of Flesh, and something quite new indeed. The report is about the Curse of Flesh and its impact, especially in those who would emerge from Uldaman and name themselves the dwarves, for it transpires that this has happened before. The report goes on to cover the fate of the Earthern contingent that were dispatched to investigate a fissure in the earth detected in Sector AR-938. It's always fun to see how the Titanforged kind of view the world, right? Even going back to the days of seeing the old laboratories of Ungoro. So, there's a fissure in the world. I want you to keep that in mind. The report then goes to detail this Earthern contingent, and the surprise that they've actually began to manifest behaviors analogous to what would become the dwarves we know of today. But the point is that these Earthen, they got Curse of Fleshed, they turned into a type of dwarf, and they started acting just like the dwarves that we know of. But they're entirely separated by time, with the Titanforged seeing no way that these societies could have met, even when their behavior, language, and naming of things is similar. Because what the Titanforged call Sector AR-938, these new dwarf-like Earthen call Kaz Algar. How the hell did this happen? The Titanforged simply do not know. So okay, we've learned that there's this dwarf society that existed long, long ago deep in the past. We know it formed from these Earthen sent into a fissure, which is a hole in the earth, that they call it Kaz Algar. And that essentially tells us that they still do worship the Titans because the Kaz, Khaz, in place names like Khazmodan, is in reverence to Khaz'goroth, who is the Titan that most resembles the ways of the dwarves, being a great craftsman and shaper of the world. What we also know is they're not really in any area we've visited yet. We've never met this new group of dwarf-like creatures. So, broadly, you could say that there are two possibilities. Option 1 is the most obvious, that these dwarves are somewhere wholly new, such that Blizzard could actually use these dwarves as a part of a new patch or a new expansion. We don't know where the sector is on Azeroth, so if Blizzard wanted to make a new continent, much like how Mother actually referred to a Titan complex on the Dragon Isles in patch 8.3, Blizzard could. However, though, there is more. You see, these dwarves descended, right, from the Earthen sent into this fissure, and that almost certainly means that they exist underground. Now, that could mean somewhere wholly new in a future expansion, or it could be patch 10.1 of Dragonflight. If you wonder why I say that, it's because of this, a datamine string called Dragon Isles Underground, brackets, warning, must be kept flagged development map until 10.1. That was datamined early on into alpha. So this could potentially indicate that we could go underground and meet these dwarves, right? Maybe it's this fissure full of these extremely ancient dwarves that Blizzard have just foreshadowed. But that kind of does lead to some other questions. Now, I hope you've watched this video that we did very recently. It covers other Titan-forged revelations, and part of that is Uldorus, aka Tyrhold, containing the Halls of Infusion. And the job of the Halls of Infusion is to infuse Azeroth with order magic, the Order of the Titans, almost acting like a Brita filter, right, for Yogg-Saron's corruption. Essentially, Yogg-Saron corrupted these like life waters or something in such a way that Galakrond actually happened, which does make sense of his self-styled God of Death title. Anyway, so what if this fissure is connected to all of that? What if it's a fissure that leads to some source of old god corruption, the one that the Halls of Infusion is warding against, and that, you know, down there somewhere, there is some long-forgotten dwarf society? Plus, underground, Dragon Isles underground. What about Northrend underground? And remember, Northrend and the Dragon Isles, they're decently close together. Northrend underground is a similar situation. Big chasms in the earth, near an ancient Titan facility of Ulduar. Earthen gets sent in there, just that, of course, fleeing Akir end up there, and they form Azul Narub, which at one point was even planned to be a whole zone, but that had to be cut during development. So I've got to wonder what's up. I mean, Azeroth is special. We've known about that for a long, long time. And not to go all Iron Sky 2, the coming race on you, but I totally start to think of a hollow Azeroth. I kind of say that half-jokingly, right, leading into the conspiracy, but we know that Azeroth is special, right? She's special in a way that a world like Draenor just is not. So who's to say Azeroth may not be a bit different, a bit unconventional? I mean, could you imagine the power of Blizzard's artists applied to something like a hollow Azeroth? It would be utterly stunning. Now, coming back to reality, dwarves are very industrious folk. So imagine what these dwarves would have built, and especially the many, many, many thousands of years we're dealing with here. So we could end up with some sort of fallen civilization, a little bit like the dwarves of Moria, or perhaps a people unable to reach the surface, maybe locked down there for some sort of Titan-ish reason. Maybe they've lost contact with their makers, they kind of worship the Titans, they think they're upholding a sacred charge to fight off some ancient corruption or something, but they don't know that they've been essentially abandoned. Or maybe it was that Loken, the keeper who betrayed the other keepers, cut them off, erased their existence from the record. I mean, that would be in line with all the stuff that went on with Loken and Tyr and Alderman. So I don't know specifically, but I think we can all see the clear potential. So there's a place called Avalorn that we discussed in this past video, and it is revealed within the same set of old Titan-forged records. Blizzard call this place Avalorn. They've of course called another place Kaz Algar, and they've done that in the same wave of lore revelations in these new this new wave of tablets we've seen. So what if they were the same place? If we were to entertain that notion, you could say that it could work, that the story could fit. One of the Titan records notes multiple failed expeditions being sent to Avalorn by Odin, and them all being a disaster, and that these are like expeditions to hunt down heretics. So if they are the same place, it would suggest the Keepers lost contact with those Earthen and their fleshy descendants at some stage, and that any future expeditions to work out what happened and find out about these heretics, that it ends in failure. And if this all happens maybe before the Halls of Infusion's creation, then you could get some big, crazy, wild backstory. But here's something that's fun. The flavor text on the item that you can actually loot in Uldaman, called Observational Report Earthen, the flavor text from that is, and I quote, "probably should have been classified." And I think that's a clear indicator that whatever is in this document is very important to the Titans. Now, going back to this business of Avalorn and Kaz Algar, it is said that, of course, heretics are in Avalorn and that Odin is sending out these expeditions. Now, if Kaz Algar was some sort of dwarven kingdom of Avalon, then, You could have a society that goes against the Titans, right? Very much unlike the dwarves that we know of today. If so, then maybe Khaz-Algar is an old name for, you know, those who hate the Makers would not name their lands in reverence of one. But the thing is, I actually don't think that's the case. I think there's an option 3, that these are different places. Dun Algar, I believe, is locked away deep beneath the Dragon Isles, and Avalorn, I think, is a distant unknown land. Because if they're different, then Avalorn would be Blizzard teasing a whole new place, one that harbors something that causes every expedition to fail horribly. So if we've ever had, then, a canon candidate for the backside of Azeroth, then Avalorn is it. As I've covered in a past video, Avalorn is similar to Avalon, and also Avalus, the latter of which belongs to, well, apparently is this like ancient amber-full island described by Pliny, I think, the Elder, in his 1st century bestseller, Naturalis Historia. That's kind of interesting, because I'm pretty sure I've referenced that book when I was researching Shadowlands lore like 2 or 3 years ago, but I've completely forgotten what I was referencing it to in the game. So, I don't know, maybe Blizzard have looked up some of that. Anyway, this mysterious island, you know, with this name that's similar to Avalon is interesting, because Avalon is an island in Arthurian legend, and you've got to think then of the context of Arthurian legend, which essentially cropped up in the 11th century to kind of unite the Britons around like a cultural identity that would be their own, because you have to remember at that time, you will have Norman influence, of course, you know, Battle of Hastings, Roman influence from their past, some of the Celtic influence, Anglo-Saxon influence, Norse influence, and this got us, specifically Matt and Jared, really thinking. So we know the Vrykul become humans. We learn that in Wrath of the Lich King when we, you know, smoke some suspicious incense and get visions of the past. Pretty cool. But we know that a bunch of Vrykul, they realize, like, King Yimmeron is gonna kill these, like, weird human baby things, or, you know, half-humans. So a bunch of them leave. And then, you know, at some point humans arrive. So what if Avalorn is the place where more of that transformation happened? Because we know a bunch of Vrykul just leave Northrend, and at some point after, the first humans crop up in a region that one day would be called Lordaeron. It's all pretty bloody tantalizing stuff. Okay, so you can see there's a lot of speculation here, but I think it's reasonable. Now, there are firm facts. The firm facts are there's a place called Avalorn, and it has got heretics on it. Odin does not like those heretics, and all his expeditions have failed. The other 100% true fact is that there's a dwarven tribe separated in time from the dwarves that we know that ventured into a fissure, and they called, like, their, you know, place, their new home, Khaz-Algar. That's all that we literally know. This is what I think. I want to hear what you've got to think. Because to me, this is exciting. You know, my very first experience of World of Warcraft's deepest lore was coming upon Uldaman and Bael Modan. And I wondered what was it about? You know? What are these big stone beings? It sparked my imagination. You know, the whole framing of the dwarves finding out about their ancestors. I thought that was cool. Doubly so when I went to Wrath of the Lich King, seeing a whole other side to them. Right? So, and also, like, underground, that sparks the imagination. We've long known of massive amounts of underground content that were cut from Wrath of the Lich King. You've got Legion's pre-patch quest teasing Yogg-Saron's survival. I have a video coming up on that. And then if you look at the map, it's feasible in the vast prehistory that Yogg-Saron could have impacted events both on Northrend and the Dragon Isles. So let's hope Blizzard can get this together, because if you are to do Titan lore, this is how to do it, right? This makes it an adventure, you know, a discovery adventure, right? This is all, you know, Bran Bronzebeard and a bunch of archaeologists diving into some old ruins and finding a tablet, and everyone tries to work out what the tablet's all about, right? Like, I think this stuff, you know, it shouldn't be done via a robot appearing and saying, hey, here's everything that happened. I think it's best done via, you know, League of Explorers shit. Anyway, I thought it was cool. I'd love to hear what you've got to say as well, and that's it for me.